That's where your team was.
Me? No, I've always been.
Yeah, that'll be a good enough reason to stop watching football.
What, if you're a Jets fan?
Jets fan.
Yeah, I'd quit too.
It's like that movie Fever Pitch. Careful, kid, to break your heart.
Okay. Let's begin the budget meeting, agenda October 13th, 2021. Could the folks on the phone please identify themselves?
Kevin Lott is on the phone.
Okay, thanks, Mickey. And we have any courtesy of the floor? Seeing and hearing none, we're going to move today into the Community and Economic Development Summary, which starts on page 78 of the White Book. We could turn our phones. All right. Would someone come and begin? Tina, do you want to begin with your department summary?
Just to give,
Tina, you
I have. Well, hello. No, I'm just, sorry.
Poor Tina.
Sorry. Just to let you folks know, the $30 million we received in ARP money is programmed and is going to be out this year. The $30 million that is in the current budget, you will notice all the grants that will be given out between 2021 and 2022. You will see a large amount of that money roll over when the new year starts, okay? That being the case, the $30 million in ARP money that is in the budget, recognized revenue, is not programmed yet and will come before county council when the programming is in place, what the administration would like to do with that money, okay? So like we did with every other part of that particular, like we did with the $30 million this year, we will bring council in, have a general plan, and then have council be members of the specific committees when we dole out that money and we create our programming around the ARP funding. And then the administration will do reporting as necessary. So I just wanted to give you that overview, and then any other questions you may have, DCED can answer those.
Go ahead.
The 30, is it reflected in here then?
The $30 million is reflected in there, yes. You'll see it in the various places, and you'll see it in the fund balances. So when you see those larger fund balances, I just wanted you to know that that is why that's there. So it's money to be set for future programming. And remember, the money that was approved even at the last meeting is programmed to be given out through the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022, and that money will roll over.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions to start? Okay, and the first page is the administration summary on 79. Steve, remind me what page the personnel numbers are on?
13 and 14.
Thank you.
And this department has 7 full-time, and they're all filled.
Any other questions? None? Moving on to Community and Economic Development Administration. Personnel and operating. The increase again is for the 4.5%.
The personnel increase is for the raises, and then the 8,900 for operating, that's for the county festival that rolled over from 2020 to 2021 for this year. So it's an anticipated costs, and then for the future going forward.
And then what fees, fines, or charges come under DCED?
Go ahead, Steve.
We have this. This one is for the administrative reimbursements that we have in there for affordable housing and CDBG and GPA.
So can you explain it under your administration costs?
Yeah, for the fees. Fees, fines, charges, and miscellaneous.
That's your catch-all revenue. What we get paid to administer those services.
Can you tell me, Steve, or Tina, how much did we, what are you anticipating for the GPA? It's all one together.
So
What do we get this year, what do we get next?
GPA, the projection for 2021 is 59,500. And the 2022 budget, there's a 3% increase built in our agreement, so they'll get 61,300.
Any other questions, Mr. Cusick?
Yeah, a couple quick ones. I've noticed, this is more in the blue book on page, I think it's 65. You're looking to double your transportation budget for next year, about?
Well, we haven't, all of our meetings thus far have been in-house via Zoom, and we're hoping that as things open up, that we'll actually be able to start attending events again and meetings again.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense then. And your $5,000 for professional services, are we bringing outside consultant in for something that you've added that? Yeah, it's professional services, pool
The
professional
operating
services.
5,000 was for the festival expenses.
2020, okay. That's it on that page.
Any other questions?
That's this page then.
Next, we'll move to the COVID response grants.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Barron, I'm guessing then that I see the 30,593,000. That's what you were talking about.
Yes.
On the blue book, I see it. Okay, that's all, thanks.
So there's a budget change in the emergency rental assistance that's gone down. Is that because funding source has gone down, or? It's a nominal fee, but
What page are you on?
Yeah.
I'm on 66, blue book.
So the 10 million from the, so that represents what gets spent. So we get a lump sum award. I'm just going to use round numbers here. So say through that program, we were awarded $10 million. We put that in the budget that it's budgeted to spend 10, or we're budgeted to receive that revenue of $10 million. As we spend that money, that's what gets rolled over. So this was based on a projection that was made back in
You know the date.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
In the white white book, on page 81. The intergovernmental, 39,793. Now, I'm guessing the 30 million of that is what Ms. Barron was talking about. What about the other 9 million? What's that, what intergovernmental revenue is that?
The part I was just asking about.
That's going to be the emergency rental assistance.
That's ERAP number 1 that comes in every year.
So that's all for that 9 million we're getting for emergency?
Well, that is emergency rental assistance, that's utilities, that is sustainable housing, all in that number.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, on the COVID response grants, I know we did a round for municipalities. I've had a couple of municipal officials ask me if we were going to open it up again next year. Is that in the plans?
It depends on what the federal government does in the ARP funding. They actually, are you talking about ERAP or ARP funding?
No, the municipal. We didn't get direction from the government on the ARP money that we're going to receive next year, so.
Yeah. And in ERAP or ARP money round 1, municipal governments actually got their own specific
direct
allocation. So they got paid directly. So in the CARES Act, they did not get paid directly, and we did grants to them. In ARP, they got paid directly. So the city of Bethlehem, the city of Easton, and all those little municipalities got their own direct allocation.
Okay, so I should just tell them, you've got your own money?
Well,
Use
it
that.
depends.
You're on your own.
It depends on what ARP money round 2 looks like, and if there is going to be a direct allocation to them. We have, like I said, we haven't programmed that money yet. So we will talk about that based on what the federal government does and if they're giving money to the local municipalities again.
Okay, thank you.
So could you clarify for me, so when we got the ARP money, even though they stated it would be 30 million one year, 30 million the next, they haven't decided on what's allowable next year? They only said allowable until December 30th or 31st, 2021?
Those rules have changed regularly, so we don't want to speak prematurely. And as soon as we get the guidelines, we'll put a plan in place and be sure to bring it to administration and council. They're always changing.
Any other questions?
Yeah. On page 67, under expenditures, the Victory House of the Lehigh Valley.
not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself, I apologize.
Yes.
No, they have to apply through one of our CMed partners who do the application processing, and then we will pay. Depends on where they live. So it would be one of the agencies, if they live in Easton, they would go to, drawing a blank.
Neighborhood
Easton
center.
Area Neighborhood Center, if they are in our project of Easton, if they're in Bethlehem area, they'll go through New Bethany. And if they're in every area, any other area of the county, they go through Third Street Alliance.
And they're-
Third Street, yes. Utilities also. Yes.
Sorry. Does it utility include broadband or Wi-Fi? Is that considered a utility in this
Not
program?
now.
No.
Not at
now.
this point in this program, okay.
Heat, water, sewer, and electric.
Okay, so if somebody's having problems paying their bill, they call one of these agencies, and then they could apply for assistance.
Yes.
Got it. And this isn't a new program. This
No.
it just happens to dovetail nicely with all the COVID measures that we're taking. But this has been a well-established program, from my understanding.
About a year.
Last August. Oh, did this just come about?
So we
Due to
had-
COVID.
Yeah, we
Okay.
had CMed money, which was a very similar program. When we got the ERAP funding, we utilized the ERAP funding and rolled that into our CMed because there were a lot of people who didn't fall under the community program. Now, with the new guidelines, we're able to get more people in, we have more funding, and we provide, just this week, $500,000 in rental assistance.
That's amazing. And what's the duration of this program till the funding runs out? Like, is there a closed pool of funds, or is there,
We have quite a bit of money. I don't think we're going to run out anytime soon.
does that roll over then to the next year? You just keep the same pot of money?
Each
Yeah.
pot, each
Till they
pot
take it.
has different deadlines. So we are balancing the pots of money right now to make sure that we spend it within the certain time limits. So
Okay.
we have different pots of money, and so if we're running low on one, we go to another. And then just so we don't have to give any money back, so we can get the maximum assistance to the people who need it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Question.
Mr. Heckman?
Just a point of clarification. As we go forward, could you say what it is instead of the acronyms? I mean, and I think there's people, human services, I used to go nuts because it's all acronyms, and I'd be yelling at people. And I mean, I'm just saying, I think it would be helpful. I mean, I know you use it day in and day out, but for here, like ERAP, I think it would just be more clarification going forward. That's my only request.
So ERAP is Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
What was the CMed?
The Community Eviction Diversion Program.
Okay, there's going to be a quiz. Okay. Moving on to the community development summary, we'll start first with affordable housing, and I believe Mr. McGee had a question. That's on pages 83 in the white and 67 in the blue.
I just had a question about the Victoria House. I remember hearing something about that, and in 2022, there's no funding there, so.
Is there a reason?
It's just a grant, but the grant probably ran out, right?
Right, so we didn't have a competitive round. And so the money that was in the 2021 budget was actually from 2020.
Okay.
So there was no competitive round, and we didn't have a competitive round this year. They've been receiving funding through other funding sources.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So the program won't close, it's just
Correct.
different pools of money.
Yes.
Would that, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Would that be part of the reasoning behind Bethlehem Emergency Sheltering and Easton Neighborhood Center?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir?
Why is it $10,000 change in the Eastern Neighborhood?
Again,
21.
that was a grant that was awarded back in 20. They spent it in 21. We didn't have a competitive round, so there's no funding for any kind of outside organizations in this budget org.
Yeah, two quick questions on this. I know on the next page, last year, we discussed Habitat for Humanity. Have you been able to follow up with the grant that we gave them this year? And did they make any requests for next year?
We did and they did not, but we're actually meeting with them next week
Oh, okay, that's
to
good.
talk about future projects.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of what you said.
We're meeting with Habitat next week to talk about future projects.
Oh, that's good. And will any of this funding be used in the affordable housing that's proposed to replace the Glendon Hotel?
Not right now.
I
Okay.
don't find that funny at all. We need to fix that thing. Yes, sir.
just one question here under the intergovernmental on page 66 under CV19 hospitality recovery. Can you just explain that? I think I understand the whole gist of that.
Sure, that was essentially a pass-through grant from the state that they said it had to come to the county, but the county had to distribute it through, what are they? Basically through the Rising Tide, which is a community loan fund.
Okay.
So it was a pass-through from us to them, and they distributed those funds to eligible businesses.
So they spent it all.
Yes.
That's all,
Great.
that's the CHIRP, sorry to use more acronyms, that's the CHIRP program that went out to the hospitality industry, if you remember.
Yeah, yep. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this section? Moving on to the grants section, 84 and 68. So we just discussed Habitat for Humanity, but there's some other entities here that always seem to come up, and I see zero balances. Do they not qualify? Or, because, Center for Animal Health and Welfare has nothing, and Saucon Valley Community Center has nothing.
These are the, this is council contingency.
These grants are funded by general fund dollars.
Yes, sir. Mr. Myers?
Stevens Place, what exactly is that?
It's
Halfway house
for men
for men.
in Bethlehem.
Addiction?
Yes. And addiction and adjudicated men.
On the way back.
So they've been in the court system and they're recovering.
Thank you. I've never heard of it before.
Sister Virginia.
You haven't met Sister Virginia?
Huh?
We're going to bring Sister Virginia in sometime. We should.
She's very persuasive.
Don't bring me no flavors.
So you're saying the only way these folks are going to get grants is if we give them through contingency? There's no other grant funding that they're,
Well, I think you just passed one for animal health and wellness.
and I thought we
And
put
Saucon Valley, too.
Community Center on the
Yes.
nonprofit.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This,
A lot of these apply for other funding sources, yes, through Grow Norco.
Yes, sir.
So the Center for Animal Health and Welfare doesn't qualify for any kind of grant?
Nonprofit.
They're different.
Well, I mean, it's showing zero.
Yeah, they could apply for the nonprofit.
They applied for the nonprofit.
I thought they did.
I think they did.
I thought we granted them. No?
We didn't go through those yet, but I do believe they're on the list that we've not reviewed yet. Animal health and wellness, health and welfare, I don't know if they did or not.
Right, and the only reason I'm bringing it up here is because these are the names that come up every single year. So other than them having to wait for some of these extraneous funds, I just wondered why they weren't on a regular queue somewhere. But I think you're answering that for me. Any other questions?
Could you give us an update on the hydroelectric power plant? I see we've spent, what's that, 81 or 61,000 this year? Yeah.
So there has been an extension on that due to COVID. The federal government, as you can imagine, is behind. The FERC permits have been submitted, and they're waiting for their approval for the FERC permits because of the waterway that it's along. Once we have that, I know they've entered into some preliminary design. My guess is we'll see more spending on that in the coming months as the permits get approved, and then into next year when they start construction.
Okay, do you know if they're just looking at the one down here, in Easton, or is the groundhog locks, in Williams still something they're looking at?
They haven't really said much about Groundhog's Lock again, and I know they did some significant improvements on the other one they were looking at that was DCNR land. But again, they haven't approached DCNR because of the same situation. They're just, people have not been working in the office and on to other projects of an emergency nature due to COVID.
Okay.
Anybody else? Moving on to the hotel room rental tax 2,000. Maybe it's a good time to give the distinction between 2,000 and 2005 before we start. Because they're different pools of money, correct?
They're both hotel tax. They could be spent on essentially the same projects.
So then were both of these pools of money funded with what we spoke about last week? They were both
So the.
given ARP funds because
Yes,
they were revenue that we did not
Correct.
receive?
So
correct?
the hotel tax grants that you approved last week will be in the hotel room, rental tax 2,000 grants, and those will all be listed.
Mr. Cusick.
Yeah, if I could just provide a little bit of the history, and maybe Mr. Barron can correct me. The hotel tax was passed in 2000 in this county, and portion of it goes to the Tourism Bureau, and they kick some of it to LVEDC. And traditionally, our smaller grants have gone out from that. What happened was in 2005, when Lehigh County was in the process of funding Coca-Cola Park, an additional, I forget, what is it, 0.5% or so, an additional amount was put on. Lehigh County specifically dedicated their portion to pay the mortgage of Coca-Cola Park, which now I understand we're kicking in as well. But we took our portion and used the vast majority of it to fund the Steel Stacks project.
Steel Stacks and PBS 39, those two buildings down in the
Founder's Way.
Steel TIF on Founder's Way.
Yeah. And we've since completed our obligation to that project. And since that time, we've looked at other projects to fund with that 2005 hotel tax money, and this is where we are now.
Ma'am,
Yes, sir.
what does UNESCO stand for?
UNESCO it's the United, it's a program under the UN. I can get you what the acronym is. It is the hotel and tourism designation as a World Heritage Site that we're working on for downtown Bethlehem and the Moravian settlement in Bethlehem.
Okay.
No, It's a World Heritage
We just went through this
Designation.
a couple weeks ago. You explained about our designation, so I understand it now.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I got it for you.
Educational, scientific, and cultural organization.
And just
I
to.
didn't realize there was a race. I missed the race.
I do want to just point out, under the hotel tax 2005, that is where your $200,000 commitment to Arts Quest for their capital campaign, I think it's for 10 years, that's where that is as well. In the hotel tax 2005,
It's in your
He
blue
just said
book.
2,000.
If you have the
Five.
blue book,
2005,
page
So
70.
that's the next one.
yeah.
You look there, you'll see it. Question.
Yes, sir.
Future grants, is that some of that money we're talking about that isn't, we don't know yet, or what's that about? On the bottom of the, page 70, Blue Book Future Grants, 429,000, up 62,000.
I imagine that's for everything else on the list and zeros.
It's for other things on the list, but also remember, these are application-driven programs. So while we have some of the money programmed from 2021 that will roll into 2022, the grants that are awarded next year fall in the future grants. And when we get those revenue numbers based on hotel stays, we will plug that number in, and then we will have a number that we can use for all future grants to make future recommendations based on the applications we receive that are appropriate for the hotel tax program.
So that's why everything but Arts Quest shows up zeros, except,
That is
Correct.
correct.
all right.
Go ahead.
One question for Mr. Barron. The Airbnb, I see, do the campgrounds, are they also like the Airbnb campgrounds or?
So if
I'm just
No, that's okay.
curious.
So with an Airbnb, so if the campground or the campsite is on Airbnb, yes, they collect the hotel tax. But there
That's the
are-
distinction.
Yeah, there are other websites that do like Camp Tonight or whatever, those types of websites that we don't have agreements with.
Okay.
But that's an agreement-driven situation. When we do go to the campsites, if the campsites rent for the year, they do charge the hotel room and occupancy tax, whatever it may be, if it's a yearly rental or if it's if you're there for more than 30 days, you're exempt from it because you're a long-term renter. But if they do it by the week or it's like the KOA campgrounds or whatever, they do charge the hotel room and rental tax
Oh,
on their bill.
in addition, but is that if they book through Airbnb or if they just,
Even if they book regularly,
Oh.
we audit, in the controller's office, we used to audit campgrounds. We still do.
so then, what, do you have any, I don't need a specific number, but just an average number, like what percentage of that comes from like Airbnb and campgrounds?
Airbnb is a little bit larger, but campgrounds is very small.
Okay.
And it's seasonal.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be able to provide at some point a timeline or like a list of some of these funding sources and then the end dates on them? Because you are very articulate knowing what's when, but I'm like, which ones end on the calendar year? Which ones end on the fiscal year? Because as Steve's talking about rollover, I mean, some of these grants are ending in December, some of them are ending in, they're all different timelines, correct?
Well, so basically, when we bring, say, the hotel tax grants to you to make a grant to an organization for a specific project, we then enter into a contract with them for them to complete the project, and we do reimbursement grants with them. So as they incur the expense, we give them the money for their project. Now, if their project would take longer than a year, that money would roll over. Or if, in the example of like ARP funding or something, if we're awarded $30 million and we then make grants to specific projects for that $30 million, as that's spent, that $30 million decreases. But if we don't spend it all by the end of the year, the balance would roll over the next year. Does that make sense?
Yes, but some of the grants he was referring to were the larger grants from the federal funding, which are, like, some of them end on the 31st of December, but yet you're saying some roll over, so what's the distinction?
I can get you dates when the funding sources run out. So like for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP, there's ERAP 1 and there's ERAP 2. I can get you the dates when those close out, where the remaining money has to go back to the state or federal government.
Assuming
If
we
that's
don't
what you're
spend it.
asking, I can get you those dates.
Yeah, I don't see why.
But you want it for all of them.
Well, for the larger pools of money, I don't need the end dates on all these little projects. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for the larger pools of funding and the basic timelines for those.
Right.
I don't need the
And-
minutia. I want the bigger picture, if that's
You
okay.
want the
can do that.
federal stuff.
Yeah,
Federal grants.
because I guess my question that follows that up is that you're saying we're gonna, I thought this money was time limited to December 31st, but you're suggesting that some of it's gonna roll over.
Correct.
And so then when does the next one start? So that's what I'm just trying to understand a little bit better.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. McGee, sorry. Oh, sorry, Mr.
Yeah, this, maybe Mr. Barron can answer this one. On the revenue side for the hotel tax, what did you base your estimate on? Because I know we've had some wild swings over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And it appears that the estimates for revenue for the hotel tax is significantly higher than even if you go back to 2019 or 20.
So-
Where did you come up with the number?
We get the hotel tax on a quarterly basis. We get a report and we get what that number is. So in 2020, those numbers really aren't that great, so we didn't really base it much on that. We did have a significant recovery in 2021. So we looked at what we had based on the August 31st number, and then we projected out conservatively what we believe the reasonable amount would be in the last quarter of the year. So we never want to promise money to somebody that we don't have a reimbursement for. And that is why we have such a conservative number there. But we're confident with this number that we have. That's the methodology we use to project it out, taking August 31st and then looking at what we've gotten historically in the last quarter of the year and going with that number, a conservative estimate of what we've gotten in the past.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on to community development grants. I guess the question that jumps out is the emergency rental assistance decrease in 1 is picked up in 2. Is that what you were referring to earlier?
Where are you looking?
Page 671, emergency rental assistance has a decrease of about almost $4 million. But then there's an emergency rental 2.
So this would be so this is a case where you get an award. So say that original award was $9 million. We put that in as the revenue for 2021. And then, we're projecting we're gonna spend around $4 million out of that program. And so the $5 million is just the reduction from that award. So that's a one-time award. It's not a reoccurring program.
Right.
May I? please?
Go ahead.
So, yeah, so in other words, I mean, I think what you're saying is, for 2021, you budgeted you'd get 9 million. But the actual projection you see now is it's only going to be 4. So based on that, you're projecting for 2022 in your budget 5.
Correct.
Now, on paper, it's going to look like $4 million reduction, but that all goes back to the fact that we more or less over budgeted in 2021.
Yeah, so we budget the entire, like, when the federal government tells us, we're gonna give you a $9 million grant,
Right.
we might not spend all 9 million that year, but we budget all 9 million, so
Alright.
that if.
So that's what happened? You were told
Yeah.
you'd get a $9 million grant, but you didn't?
No, we did, but it's all on reimbursement.
Let me hear what he has to say.
It's all on reimbursement. So
Okay.
they tell us you have
So
$9
we
million.
didn't, we weren't
so
able to
we
get it
submit
all out there.
expense.
We
Yeah,
weren't able to get it all out there.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I do. So I'm clear. You put a request in to get the money reimbursed, is that what you're telling me?
Most of these programs operate on a reimbursement basis. So with HUD, you need to incur the expense before you can draw it down from the HUD system. So if you never incur the expense, you still have a grant, that money's still there for you, but you got to draw it down.
Gotcha. Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a comment. That's a very complicated process, and I think you guys are doing a great job at it. Thank you.
Anybody wants a lesson on the HUD drawdown system? We're glad to.
I see Mr.
It's a lot of fun. Frank and I have fun with those.
Mr. Brooks is hiding in the back.
He's the drawdown king.
Yes, Ms. Zirinsky.
So, with this whole thing that's going on with HUD, how is that going to change this budget?
It won't.
It won't.
No, it's all federal money. We draw down.
But when we take over our HUD housing again, is that going to?
That's not in
No,
this
it
budget.
won't be in this budget.
That's not in this budget,
totally
totally
different.
separate.
Totally separate
Okay.
entity.
So sometimes HUD's not HUD. There's another HUD.
No,
There's-
no, it's the same housing and urban development,
Yeah.
but it's a totally separate entity, like an authority that would. run
Housing
that.
authority budget won't be
Yeah,
in this.
Won't be in, oh, okay. So that funding will not go to that and it won't be affected. I'm just asking.
Right.
Because I think that people would have that same sort of question about HUD because it's the same name. Do you know what I mean? So that, it would be nowhere in here because that budget would go to the HUD authority. So all the money would be pooled there and drawn from whatever the authority is allocated.
The housing authority will have their own completely separate budget, not part of this at all.
Got it, thank you. Just checking.
Any other questions?
I just figured I'd complicate it a little bit more.
So on page 72, this is still part of the same thing. These are all the pass-through, or this is the next section? The pass-through grants,
Correct. So,
72 and 73, correct?
right, so 72, basically, most of those, that's where we're spending the money. What we were talking about just before is the revenue we receive, but it's a pass-through.
Exactly what you're spending it on.
Correct.
Any question?
Yeah, EPA brownfields, could you tell us what you're working on right now and where that money is anticipated to go for next year?
It's on the next page.
Yeah, I'm on page, it's 73, yeah, EPA brownfields. Says we had 170 this year and 168.9 next year. I'm just wondering do you recall what specific projects?
Sure.
That
In
went
this,
to?
in this particular program, this is where we had been working on the Green Knight Industrial Park, the tire pile. So that's where the majority of the expenditures.
That's been gone for a long time. I mean,
So,
that-
So that's where the majority of funds have been spent. As part of that award, we were able to secure some supplemental funds, and we're looking at a project in Easton, the Easton Iron and Metal project.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
So hopefully we'll be doing that, but we're working through the details on that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good project.
Madam,
Sir?
I need to be enlightened on the Green Knight program. What is that, yeah?
So the Green Knight Industrial Park 2 is the former beer site. So if you, off of 33, the tire pile that was up there by the Wind Gap interchange,
Wind Gap.
if you recall,
By the
on
bowling alley.
33, yeah. So the Green Knight Economic Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit economic development corporation, secured that site and worked with us to remediate it. And they are putting in an industrial park that will support industrial development. The plan was, 40,000 square foot buildings, and I think they have 10 lots on that site. So they are working to get that developed. I believe they have 1 or 2 of the sites under agreement, and they're expected to break ground shortly on vertical construction.
And we're doing what at the Eastern Iron Metal site?
Easton,
Nothing?
Easton and Iron and
They're
Metal
doing a super clean, right? Is that
Well,
what they're trying to do?
will be clean, these funds would be involved in the cleanup of the site. So there are some environmental concerns there, and these funds would go to help remediate that.
Because they're tearing down buildings and doing stuff now.
Correct.
They're still
We're
working
waiting
that.
on, we have to finalize the cleanup plan.
And that's gonna be part of the Sterner,
I believe a portion of it will.
and the rest, you have no idea what plans the city has with that?
Not yet.
And the LVEDC money is for what?
So
Their annual.
as part of this, as part of the cleanup grant, the RLF, LVEDC helps us manage this grant, and we have to secure site contractors, qualified environmental professionals, so they handle that bidding for us, and so it's really a pass-through to the environmental remediation contractors, or the people that are certifying the work.
Any other question? Gaming host county tables, under economic development summary. So here's all the fun stuff, right? Questions? Move on to Grow Norco. Now, all these are the ones we just approved last week, correct?
Correct. That'll be coming out of this org.
And is there anybody in here that's kind of left over that we're still paying out, or?
A bunch.
Is there anybody, I know this happens at times, are there people who just haven't used the funding? Because I know there's times that we've offered and then someone doesn't get to follow through for whatever reason. Do we have many people that are outstanding in this category, or no?
Usually not, no.
Any other questions?
Still looking.
So, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Now, on page 76, those are the municipality grants that we just gave, correct? Or no?
Continuation
It's continuation.
from 75.
Those are
Yep.
still Grow Norco grants.
75 and 76.
But these are specifically to the municipalities as opposed to,
So Grow Norco
Yes.
can be given to nonprofits and municipalities.
Can I ask a question?
yes,
So when you go down and it says future grants, 1,076,000, that's to pay for all the zeros? Like if they would apply for that, that's where that money would come from, so you have some for the rest of the year? Got it. Thanks.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify that. So those other entities will most likely get some money throughout the year because they'll apply for it
So
when they need it.
all of the grants that you just approved last week for Grow Norco are not in this budget book.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would think almost everybody in here won't have a zero behind them, but they'll have whatever was awarded to them.
Right, so when the budget comes out next year, we'll see all those awards and they'll be in one place and then we'll
Yes.
start over.
Yes.
Got it.
Just a couple questions on the municipalities. Bethlehem City dropped from 138 to 9,000. That's not like them not to ask for a lot of money.
So here again, like, we didn't award any grants through this program, except for what you just awarded last
Okay.
week. So none of that's in here.
And they did very well.
Okay, all right.
So you
Now
have to look and
I
see how they
know.
did in 2021. to see what
Oh.
They actually got.
Then the other question is 20,000 last year and this year for Walnut Port. That's significant. What are we doing up there? I'd forgotten.
So, with Walnut Port, that would have been what they were awarded. They aren't gonna spend their grant this year, so that's just carried over to next year. So it's not, they're not getting a total of $40,000.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
$20,000 award that they didn't
So
spend this year.
Then the
and
next
they're gonna spend
question
next
is,
year.
why can't they spend money in Walnut Port?
I don't remember what that specific project
don't
was
either.
about. I'd have to look into it and find out.
Okay, well, if you find out, that'd be nice, because, when these things drag on and on and on,
But
it's.
well, this one will be easy. This round in Grow Norco, they're getting a new skid loader, so that should be one quick, easy, simple purchase that they'll be able to spend.
And keep in mind, like, the projections that we make for spending, we're doing that back in June or July. So the situation with their project
Yeah.
may have changed by now or could change by the end of the year. So a lot of times when we're projecting, we want to make sure that they have money to spend if it carries over into next year. But if they'd spend the rest of it this year, that'll get cleaned up in the roll. And so if they would spend that $20,000 this year, there'd be nothing there.
Yeah, I think my question was really whether it was, $40,000. Now, you're just saying it was a $20,000 project. They didn't get it started, so we just rolled the money over. Okay, yeah, that makes sense now.
Any other questions? Gaming host county slots.
The 92.
92 and 77. Yes, sir.
These fines and charges and miscellaneous, the state allocation of revenue from the gross terminals, the slot machines, Wind Creek. And it says it reflects the continued uncertainty of the fee collections, but we've upped it 350,000 from 21 to the budgeting for 2022, 87.5% increase. Are we also factoring in, though, the fact that there's more phone, in other words, there's virtual slots now, and that's taking off, and even the casinos themselves have expressed concern
So
that even with the pandemic ending, they may see a bit of a drop.
all of those virtual casinos
Yeah.
are linked to a specific casino. So you can log into Wind Creek. If you're in with Fox Bets, you are in with the one in the Poconos. If you are in with FanDuel or whatever, you are down at Parks in the Philadelphia area. So gamble local, use Wind Creek's app.
So I guess my main question, though, is you don't feel we're being overly optimistic with that budget projection?
No, because in 2020, the casinos were closed for a large period of time. And then when they opened back up, they created social distancing between the machines. So the casinos took a bunch of machines out. So that anticipates the casinos being open the whole year. And if you'll notice, it's not even half of what we're projecting to get in. So we're even being more conservative with our number.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions, other than
Your projection is 350?
gamble local?
That was our projection, 350?
So, no, it's a $350,000 increase. Our projection is $750,000. Our projection for this year is the $400,000 number, but that, that is based on, that's where we were. The budgeted amount last year was based on the smaller projection of $400,000. Casino was only open for about half of the year. So we're figuring that since the casino will be open all year, we take that $350,000 number and put it in there. That's a conservative estimate.
Okay.
You good? Moving on to economic development pass-through grants. So I see two things here that were elsewhere. So is this a separate and distinct grant with the same name? The LSA Monroe grant and the Green Knight Economic Development? Or these are just, they're just here because that's where they were then?
They're separate grants, but these projects have ended, so they were LSA Monroe grants for those two specific projects, and those projects have ended,
Money's gone.
and the money's gone. Now, there may be
They spent.
more, like, we're applying for grants all the time. The award cycle, we probably won't find out on awards till next year. You know, then it gets put into the budget, and this is where they would live.
In this little happy place on
Yes.
this page? Okay. Anything else? Moving on. MCLSA Slate Belt YMCA.
Yes. So with this one, this org is gonna no longer exist, and it is going to the Community Development Pass-Through Grants, Monroe County LSA, because the construction phase has ended on their project, the Slate Belt Y. It's just basically gonna be an interest payment every year, so there'll be no kind of accumulated balance. We're gonna get $250,000 that comes in, and we'll send it right out to the Y so they can make their debt service payment.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
I got the Monroe, the Monroe County, but what the LSA, does that mean?
Local share account.
Okay. So if I see it, I can understand what that would be from this point on. Thank you.
Was the YMCA, was that a RAC from the state grant?
It was part of the Monroe County local share account.
Okay.
When they revised the legislation last, they got a carve-out that they're getting $250,000 a year for the next 20 years. That was for the Slate Belt Y pool.
Thank you.
Pool? They got a pool, they built a pool and gymnasium.
It's a nice grant. But didn't we vote on something for that? Or was that just that we voted on the approval? Because
I think
we
you had to
Approve to
approve to
apply.
accept the funds.
Man, that's a nice deal.
I know.
Tom can invite you, right?
Any other questions on that? Moving on to the revolving loan EPA. And again, this is a separate category because,
So this dovetails with
Green Knight.
I think it's in the community development pass-through. So
Right,
the
we-
revolving loan that we have, part of it can be used as grant dollars, and a part of it can be used as loan dollars. So this is the loan portion.
yes,
At one time, this was a pretty vibrant, the loan program. I mean, the community economic development was, was getting money out. How has this been over the years in terms of application? I mean, now I know there's so many grants, but the revolving loan fund would be used by businesses, whatever, to come in. I'm just wondering, is it used, do you feel it's being used to address the advantage in the community?
Since I've been here, we really have not had robust loan programs from the county. The only really active one is this brownfields cleanup loan program. But we haven't done a small business loan out of the Economic Development Office in at least 6 years.
I think part of the problem probably is when I reference at one time, that could be anywhere from 3 years to 30 years. So I just know that this was a big deal at one time.
And I
But,
would say-
maybe with the advent of bigger and bigger grants that are just, why get a loan fund if you can get a grant? And maybe that's part of it too.
And there are,
Let me
Yeah.
actually get that.
So with the rise of LVEDC, as you know, previous councils and executives created the General Purpose Authority and the Industrial Development Authority, where you might see the kind of loan funds that you're talking about emanate from, except that the money is so cheap that there's no need to go to the government to borrow money. So those revolving loan funds were really meant to spur economic growth and job creation during a time of very high interest rates. And because you can go into the regular market and get your loan, it doesn't really make sense for anyone to go to the Industrial Development Authority or the General Purpose Authority to do that.
But we are going to keep them
But
in.
so you're right, that was the thing.
Yeah.
We do still have that ability through those two authorities. And, if,
So if grants dry up and interest rates shoot up, we still keep this on the books?
we have the legal authority through those authorities to do it. And then council always has the firepower to cede those authorities with the ability to do that if it chooses.
All right, thank you. I know, like I said, at one time, but
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, that makes sense. And it was used, but that was probably a fairly long time ago. Thank you, that's all.
And then the last is the revolving loan MCLSA, which I assume is the same situation as.
So the background on this one, this was a specific Monroe County local share account grant that the county served as the administrator and pass-through for the Bangor Trust Building in downtown Bangor. And that was a grant to loan. So the state granted us the dollars and we loaned it to the developer to redevelop that property. And so this is the repayment of those funds.
I'm just wondering, Madam Chairman, is Mr. Giovanni happy with the job he did?
Good job.
Okay.
Yeah, you got a winery in there, you got a whole bunch of stuff.
It's his turf, I just wanted to know.
Last is the general government cost allocation. Page 82 and page 97.
Totally, Steve.
That is, so we did some of that last time. Again, that is just the cost allocation of all the services we provide throughout the budget. So we have payroll services, and, there is a cost related to that. There is disbursements, which is, accounts payable, accounts receivable. All those things that funnel through the government, those are the costs as they run through our cost allocation plan.
Yeah, it's presented here again. I'm not sure why we did.
That's okay.
Okay, any last questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
just one last thing, since Mr. McClure brought it up. The GPA and the IDA, have they made any requests for funding this year? Or are there any pending projects that you're aware of that might come before us?
Yeah, we're
Job
rolling that
creation.
forward. Yeah, so there is money in the IDA, and the GPA do keep fund balances. That money is all rolling forward, and those budgets are completely separate and governed by the authorities.
Yeah.
We get the administrative fees from those entities. And if we have significant projects or things of that nature, we bring them to county council, and county council has the ability, obviously, to allocate funds to those ventures and to those authorities to conduct that business.
And at this time, they didn't make any requests?
Not that I'm aware of.
And there is some money in the budget for job retention creation for the IDA,
Okay, thank you.
and no pressing need for any more.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, that concludes this budget hearing for DCED. Again, thank you for all that you do for us. I don't know how you keep it all straight, but you do, so we appreciate that. And our next budget hearing will be on the 27th. We are adjourned.
Have a good night.
Oh, I forgot Kevin's even on the phone. Is this yours?
Nope.
How come we don't have,
Good job. I told you already.
how come we don't have that last page though?
You don't need it. It wasn't in the part of the book. It's my thing.
Oh,
So-
it's not
Totally
even
not
in the
you.
book?
Yeah, so,
Oh.
No, it's in the
Okay.
book, but it's the end of your budget. It's at the end of general government. It's your thing.